Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Almost Shabbat Shalom to everyone. We are we are in for a good one today. I'm pretty excited about this. It's going to involve a little bit of kind of insider baseball, a little bit more esoteric things, but I think it really provides for a good message. Um, so it'll involve some Hebrew, but we'll parse it out together, and hopefully it's clear through this type of communication. This week we are looking at an author called Or Torah. That is one of the names of the collections of teachings of the Maggid of Mezrich. So we've seen a couple of his teachings before, and many of the teachings that we read, that we learn every week, are students of the Maggid of Mezrich, and so this is the Maggid himself, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Worth the price of admission. Um, so he has a very very creative reading, and beautiful understanding of our relationship to God. Um, so I'm always of the belief that it's not like a spoiler alert. It's actually worth it to know where they're like going to take the teaching to, so that you have an idea of it. But the teaching is going to more or less say, and we'll look at the specifics, is that um, both God and humans are not complete without the other, and that we somehow need to have each of us in a part of our lives to make the other one complete. So it's a pretty beautiful message, and there's some really cool images and word plays that he uses. So he starts off with a verse from this week's Torah portion, in the beginning of chapter 10 of Bimidbar, where it is talking about making trumpets, making two trumpets of silver. The context of the verses, again, for these Hasidic masters, are not necessarily important. But you can look there and you'll see that these two trumpets are made in order to kind of guide the Jewish people as they're going through the desert. When you call out certain calls, the group should camp together or they should move on. But again, the context is not important. What's important, I guess, are just the words. I mean, it's not, the words aren't themselves aren't that important too, because he's going to break up the words to mean something else. But we'll, but the words are important. So the word in Hebrew for a trumpet is, or trumpets, are chatzotzrot. I'll say it again, chatzotzrot. And so the Maggid, is going to have a word play that chatzotzrot should be read as chatzi tzurot. So instead of reading it as chatzotzrot, as a trumpet or trumpets, it is chatzi tzurot. It is half of an image. Half of an image, chatzi tzura. And each of those halves, one half is going to be a human, the other half is going to be God. Okay. The phrase shtei chatzotzrot, the two trumpets, is to be read as linked with, and this is a verse from Ezekiel, on the image of the throne was an image with the appearance of a man from above. Don't worry, I don't understand what that verse means either. This is an important chapter for mystical thinkers. This is the first chapter of Ezekiel, his vision of the chariot, this kind of vision where Ezekiel has this chance to kind of see what God is like, or what the heavens are like. And so this chapter is quoted and used all over the place for mystics, and I'm sure we've seen quotes from it in our time studying together. He'll get to what the importance is of that verse, so don't worry about it. What you just need to know is that this verse is about what God is like. Okay. A person is really made up of Daled and Mem. So the letters Daled and Mem. And so, again, a little bit insider baseball again. We kind of have to do a lot of preparatory work for them. But a person is an Adam, right? Like Adam, the first person that ever lived. Adam, they spell their names Aleph, Daled, Mem. So a person is really only made up of those last two letters, Daled and Mem, two letters that may be taken to stand for Dibur. The Daled is Dibur, speech, and the Mem is Malchut, God's kingship that dwells within it. That there's a certain type of godliness in us. But together, also composing Dam, or blood. So we are an Adam, we are a human, a person. We are made up of those letters Aleph, Daled, and Mem. But right now, what we're kind of really made up of is just Daled and Mem, just the speech and kind of this godly dwelling within us. But also those two letters, Daled and Mem, also spell out the word Dam, blood. Right? We're just kind of flesh and blood. But when you attach yourself to the Holy One, who is the cosmic Aleph, representing the oneness of all being, you become Adam, a full human being, i.e., the divine presence turns flesh and blood into humanity. So we, who are just this Daled and Mem, perhaps just this kind of flesh and blood, we have to connect back to that Aleph, Aleph standing for the first letter of the alphabet, but just kind of this larger oneness or unity behind all of existence. And when we connect to that godliness, we then bring together those letters, which then we are now a full human being. We are now Adam. Okay, I'm going to pause and let Gio reflect and react if there's something that's either confusing or comments.
Yeah, that's interesting. So speech and God's kingship, or sovereignty, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
uh, viewed as making up the blood, i.e., the physicality of the human, but they're both inherently non-physicality traits.
Right, yeah.
Like there are many strong traditions in Judaism that associate speech with divinity. Some commentaries say, what does it mean for us to be created in the image of God? It means that we speak.
Yeah.
Unlike the other animals, which those commentators assumed did not have any sense of speech.
Right.
And what makes, and another teaching would be like, what makes God the king is the fact that we are God's I don't know, citizens. What's the word I'm looking for? Um, the
The
people living in God's
Yeah.
subjects.
Yes. Okay.
Um, and these two words also, the speech and the malchut, the sovereignty, are associated with in Kabbalah with the divine masculine and feminine. So they're both words that if I'm going to read a Kabbalistic text, I'm automatically going to think of supernal things, not earthly things. So it's interesting that he's saying this is the earthly part, and there's this other supernal part, because I mean he could just as easily have gone the direction, maybe this is where he's going, of saying even these are not really earthly.
Right. Nice. Yeah, I hadn't noticed that as I was reading it at first, that these two things that he's bringing up, which are supposedly the kind of physicality of us, is actually what makes us divine and unique.
Yeah. But it's certainly an interesting point, and again a commonly said one in Jewish tradition of what it means to be human is that we are part earthly and part heavenly. We are that bridge between the heaven and the earth.
Yeah, what I find so compelling, what I like about this is that um, I mean I love the wordplay, and I love that. Yeah, no, if you take away that aleph, if that aleph is going to signify for you God, and you take that away, all you are is just blood. Are you all you are is just kind of this, you know, this physical being, this human. Um, but if you want to provide some type of godliness in your life, that's what's going to make you a full human being. That's going to kind of allow you to express or live your life fully.
I'm also pondering this just an extra layer beyond what he's doing. He's associated Daled Mem with speech and Malchut. Um, and the Mem, the reason why the letter is called Mem, it comes from the word Maim, meaning water, which, if you look at the shape of the Mem, it presumably was originally some kind of hieroglyphic, I guess would be the word, of waves.
Hmm.
Um, and water is associated in Judaism both with the physicality and with the supernal divinity, right? One of the first days of creation, God separates the upper waters and the lower waters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Dalet, which is from the word delet, which is door, which you can see the Dalet presumably looks like a tent door, but then tilted upwards. Um, and so we again are that separation between the solely earthly and the solely heavenly. We are that doorway in between them.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice.
But that's probably not what he's saying.
No, but it adds to the teaching. I mean, I think in ways he's going to touch on that.
Oh, cool.
Um, okay. The Blessed Holy One, entered into multiple contractions. Here the word is tzimtzum, which we've talked about many times. So the Blessed One, Holy One, entered into multiple contractions of his own self, coming through various worlds in order to become one with humans, who could not have withstood God's original brightness. So God needs to go through various tzimtzumim, various contractions, in order for God's really essence, which is this kind of super light brightness of God, to be even in existence in our world. Now, the person has to leave behind all corporeality, also traveling across many worlds, in order to become one with God. So you might have thought, regular attendee or student of Chassidut, that Tzimtzum, the contraction, just exists on God's part. He's now taking it a step further. The contraction in the Tzimtzum also exists on the human part as well. You, the person, have to leave behind this corporeality, traveling across many worlds, in order to become one with God. Then then our own existence is itself negated. Such a person is truly called Adam, the one on the image of the throne, or kiseh. Okay, I'm going to pause here because he's going to go into something totally new. But let's just pause here.
Great.
All right, Smiley Geo, what's up?
This is cool. Um, yeah, yeah. Right. So this language of contraction of tzimtzum, kind of a common visualization of it within Kabbalah is this idea that there was before the beginning, there was just this infinite divine that, in order to create space for us to exist, had to pull back, had to contract from out of the center, leaving a void in which to create. But this, to me, this seems to be using it in a different way, which is I think a common Hasidic way to use the term, which is more of like a cloaking when it says contracting. Um, that God has to travel through these various worlds, essentially putting on layer after layer of clothing so that this divine light won't just wash us all away, so that we can
Mm-hmm.
actually manage to exist. Now, I mean, I'm curious as to where he's going with this, but this doing it in reverse, right, of us uh, contracting. It sounds like the opposite direction would be us, metaphorically speaking, taking off layers of physical clothing. Physical clothing, not meaning clothing, but meaning our own physicality. This could lead to a ascetic interpretation, which I don't know if I assume that's not where he's going,
Yeah.
but by sense, trying to approach God by stripping away our physical attachments, which is actually counter to a lot of the texts that we've seen over the past few years from these early Hasidic rabbis, who repeatedly talk about finding God through our physical things, right?
Right.
Through eating and whatever else.
Hmm. Yeah. I think yeah, I'm struck by, um, I'm not sure if I've seen that the other move. I've seen Tzimtzum and what God has to do in order for God to exist in this world. That we see time and again so often in these texts. But I think it's so neat and innovative. It feels like for him to do it the flip side. It's like, and okay, so if God has to cloak God's self or contract whichever kind of image you want to use in order for like this essence of God to exist in the world, you think you can just access it? No, no, no. You've got to go through your own Tzimtzum as well. Whatever, however you want to visualize that, but you need to tap into some place that is either contracting or removing or kind of drilling deeper down into to find that godly element within you.
Yeah, there's actually a similar idea in next week's Parsha of the Zohar. Um,
Cool.
yeah, um, yeah. It's also it's. You might think you can sit here and experience the divine, right? Like, God, come to me. It's like, no, 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 no. You also have to travel. You also have to do the work.
Yeah.
You have to quest for the divine.
All right. Okay. So now he's going to go back to that original verse, which was on the image of the throne was
The
an
original
image.
Ezekiel verse.
Yes, yes, yes. Sorry, yeah, the Ezekiel verse. On the image of the throne was an image with the appearance of a man from above. So let's just go to, right. Such a person is truly called Adam, the one on the image of the throne, or kiseh. Right. That's the throne that we're talking about in Ezekiel. So kiseh could mean seat or throne, but it also can come from the idea of kisui, of a hiding or a covering. That word can also refer to hiding, for God himself is hidden, kisui, there. God is hidden in this world. Right? In order for God to exist in this world, God needs to contract God's self. So God's existence, essence, nature is a hidden nature in this world. This follows the prophet's description of cloud and crackling fire. So, unfortunately, I don't provide the verse, but it's in the beginning of this chapter, chapter 1 of Ezekiel, verse 4. And so it's talking about how Ezekiel entered into this moment of revelation with God. I looked, and lo, a stormy wind came sweeping out of the north. A huge cloud, so here's the cloud, a huge cloud, and flashing fire, surrounded by a radiance, and in the center. That's how kind of the beginning of his vision. So that's the cloud and the fire. At first, the person is in a cloudy state, filled with darkness, unable to pray with enthusiasm.
Hmm.
But then along comes the crackling fire, or as they translate in the JPS, the flashing fire, when we attain ecstasy. This is the image of the throne, where our blessed God is hidden. We discover it in a mar'eh, in an appearance. Right? So this Ezekiel sees all of this stuff, the cloud, the fire, all of it, all of this, and it appears to him, right? He discovers it in this type of appearance. But that word can also mean mirror, which, if you know modern Hebrew, you'll know mar'eh also means mirror. So, again, now it's going to be the parallel thing. If God is doing something, then we're doing something. Or if we're doing something, then God is doing something. Whatever is awakened in us is awakened also within God. If love is aroused in the tzaddik, so too it is aroused above. The same can be true of any quality. This is true of those who are very pure, rising across all those worlds to become one with God.
Mm.
Okay, so he does a lot here in this in this in these few sentences. So we start right, backtrack, right? God does contraction, we do contraction to meet God. Okay. So, but in this world where we're meeting God, God is right in this totally contracted um, existence, meaning God is totally hidden in some ways or hard to penetrate. Um, so, too, we have these cloudy states, these moments where we're feeling dark or unable to connect or pray or whatever it might be. Um, Here he doesn't explain how the fire comes, but then a fire comes, maybe some type of inspiration, an interaction with a person, a moment, whatever that might be, um, where you're able to then connect to God or realize connect to God in some way. Um, Whatever that appearance or vision is, the way that we see God, I think what he's saying is actually what's going on for us. So if we are feeling a sense of love, then we are going to connect. I'm losing it here a little bit, but if we I guess feel sort of maybe a sense of yearning or love, or maybe even, I mean, any feeling, but let's just take the love one, then we're going to awaken that within God and kind of see that in God. Um, and I think that in a certain sense he's then saying, like, this is how you connect to God. You have to connect deeply within your side inside of yourself, um, and in that place you will find God. I feel like a little shaky on those last couple on like the last two few sentences.
Let me essentially do what you just did, and I'll take my run through that.
Okay.
Okay, so um, the person, so the verse in Ezekiel says that Ezekiel sees the appearance of a likeness of a person, which is a nice vague uh, statement because it doesn't say there's a person on the throne. It doesn't say there's the appearance of a person on the throne. It's the appearance of a likeness of a person. It's just this like very removed, and so that word mar'eh is in that Ezekiel verse.
Yeah.
So there's this mar'eh, this appearance on top of this kiseh, this throne, this hiddenness, and in our world, it's so easy to perceive God as hidden and not see God in, you know, open your eyes, whatever's going on, right? And indeed, even in these moments with Ezekiel's vision, which is this like crazy revelatory vision of the divine presence, and on Sinai and a number of other times, when these happen, they're surrounded by clouds and there's this fire, and it's that the divine voice comes out from the cloud, right? So even in the revelation, there is still some hiddenness.
Hmm.
And so the question here that he's asking, with regard to the hiding, is where is the divine? The divine seems to be hidden, but where? So, hidden in the cloud. Okay, fine, of course, right. Then he takes it, diverts from there back to us for a moment and say, okay, sometimes we're in this dark state, sometimes we're in this light state. That's kind of just human nature, I suppose. And this is the image of the throne where God is hidden, meaning the and the person is from the Ezekiel verse. The person is hidden in the throne, and then from our sense, the throne is hidden within the person. I think is what he's saying. So, as opposed to that other model, this is the person. This is what is not hidden. What's inside this person? Hidden is the divine
Hmm.
essence.
Yeah.
Um, Again, tapping to that mirror that he raises, and that you mentioned, that there's this parallel, um, and he doesn't. He's not even. You could say, oh, there's a parallel between the heaven and the earth, and but he like really means that, like, not even just like a parallel, but a mirroring, right? Such that when we love, etc., it causes God to love, is one interpretation there. Thus, which we've seen in these Kabbalistic texts before, that when we spread love into the world, God will send more love down into the world. Or another interpretation of this could be, how does God send love into the world? Through our bringing love into the world, right? So it's not. I mean, he's definitely speaking causal, but you could read this in a non-causal way. Um, since the divine is hidden in us, whatever trait we are bringing into the world, that is the revealedness of the hiddenness of God, bringing that into the world.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to articulate a little bit better is that there's a sense that when I'm, I guess I'm not, I don't know, I don't think it's necessarily if I'm seeking after God, but if I am having a feeling, let's say, of love, compassion, again, name any feeling, that in that place I will also find God. The appearance of the appearance, the appearance the appearance of myself, or the appearance of what I'm like, that's going to be a mirror to me. Whatever I'm seeing is, I'm having a hard it's like the well, the appearance is God, but like whatever that appearance is really what is the mirror back of what you're longing for, feeling.
Yeah, it feels like there's a certain sense of mindfulness is not quite the word I'm looking for, but that also. Um, be the change you want to see in the world type of thing, right? Or a glass half full or empty type of thing, right? If you are viewing the world in this way, then that is going to shape your experience of the world. So if you are approaching the world with love or whatever else, that essentially creates a reality, even in a non mystical sense, though obviously also he's talking in a mystical sense. It creates a reality in which that trait is present.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something still more that I can't exactly fully articulate. But there's some, and whatever, it's not worth trying. I mean, but there's something there about, like, if you're reaching out to God, God's reaching back out to you. Like whatever you're doing is being mirrored by God. And not to say that God is a puppet, but I don't know, I find it more, because a puppet wouldn't be compelling. But that I don't know, that it's mirroring, it's reflecting, it's reacting to. Um,
Though there are early Hasidic texts that do sound more like that puppeting analogy.
right. I don't see it here as much. I see it here as something a little bit more nuanced for our.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how I want to see it as the modern reader of it.
Uh-huh. It also makes me think of like a Martin Buber type of um, relational theology. where is God? It's in the relationship that we have between each other and the world and everything else, and how we choose to approach everything else in the world, both emotionally and intellectually. That is where you find God, in that true experience of um, seeing the other and interacting with the other,
Right.
and the intentions that you have, and the approaches that you have while you do that.
So
Oh yeah,
the
trumpets.
what? These are the two trumpets. These are the two chatzotzrot, the trumpets of kesef, of silver. A person is only a chatzitzura. A person is only half of the whole form, right? We are just dam, blood, right? Those last two letters of Adam. But the aleph by itself, as it were, is also an incomplete form. Holy moly. Okay. But only when attached to one another are they made whole. Kesef isn't just silver, but it can mean longing. Yes, that's true. Okay. When from Yedid Nefesh, Nichsof Nichsafti, your longing after God. When you long for the Blessed Holy One, God loves you as well.
Right, the Aleph by itself being incomplete is your reaction was the probably the proper reaction. Like, whoa, wait, what? I thought you said the Aleph is God. God
Right.
incomplete by God's self? Well,
Apparently,
yeah,
that's what he's saying, which I think is so. It's very radical.
yeah. There's a mystical idea that the first number is two,
Okay.
because there's, if you only have one, right? If there is only one, there's no reason to label it one. It's just
Right.
what is. So
Right.
the moment where numbers come into being is when God first creates an other. When there's finally a second for the first time, that's when numbers have any existence or reality or meaning.
Yeah.
So
And
one is inherently incomplete.
right. I mean, I think, and we've talked, you and I, but I think I imagine other folks have thought about this concept of that we are partners with God in creation, and but I think this just adds like a whole, I don't know, just an image to it, a different flavor to it that I don't know. I mean that's just it's more mystical in nature, but it's a pretty amazing sentence. The thing like the Aleph, God by God's self, is incomplete. It's just going to be this floating Aleph, which is not. It's looking for the Dalet and Mem. It's looking to be attached. Um,
As mentioned earlier, and as it's, I think it's in like High Holiday liturgy at some point. But it's at least an implication, if not explicitly, that a king is not a king without its subjects, right?
right. Yeah, it's in the Talmud
Is that Talmud? Okay.
on this on the section. Right. Why do we call God a king?
Oh, okay. Cool. Thanks.
Um,
Um, yeah. So that idea, very much predates the Hasidic movement and even the Kabbalistic movement. Um, that God is only what God is because of us, but as you're saying, this really ups it to a much higher level of partnership.
yeah. Right. I mean, I guess it's. I don't know. I mean, I think you could. I don't have to think I necessarily have a good enough language to express that it's. I don't know. Maybe I'm just missing the right words here. But like when you long for God, God is longing for you. I don't know. I don't just see it as the like, oh, I do this, now God does that. It's that like there's this perhaps deeper inner movement of when you can remove all whatever gunk and layers and kind of get to some deeper core sense of who you are or this godly element and you through that are feeling love or compassion, that then becomes what the image mirror of the place where God is going to reach out to you.
There's also, it feels like there's a hint of sadness here. in
What do you
that
mean?
what is longing? Longing is when you want to be united with someone or something that you are not united
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
right? Um, and it's interesting. He does change the word here, at least in the translation. When you long for God, God loves you. But
yeah. Let me see what they how they yeah
but
continue.
if the word there is actually the same as longing, it implies that God has this distance from us that God wants to overcome that we have as well. And it seems this text right here seems to imply that that longing can never actually completely be fulfilled, right?
Hmm.
There's still always going to be that distance where we're feeling some distance from God and God is feeling some distance from us. And that's there's a hint of sadness in that, I mean it's still
Right. I mean, I think that. I mean, I'm sure there are other more eloquent ways or teachers that talk about this, but that's probably just that's the whole existence of this world is us trying to meet God and God trying to meet us.
right.
And that if it were ever to happen, then it would just be, a messianic oneness. That wouldn't, there wouldn't be entity existence anymore. It would just
Right.
be
We
God.
would have yeah.
Um,
I think there was something above it. We would we would essentially not withstand God's brightness. We would become fully our own existence would itself be negated. We would no longer be a separate entity that could long or be longed for.
yeah.
Huh. Which, in a way, feels a little sadder.
I guess, I mean, for me, it doesn't, I hear your sadness. I think for me, that just like more speaks about the reality of connection with God is that you're searching for it. And there are moments that maybe you can touch it or get near the touching it, but you're not going to get it. Like it's not, Um,
Yeah, totally.
all right, let's see what the editors have as a note here. The theological statement here is quite a bold one. Both God and the human are chatzi tzuris, as it was pronounced. They are both half forms, each needing the other in order to be complete. We humans may be mere flesh and blood, needing God's presence to be whole, but God, without us, is merely an olive, not yet a whole world, unable to be manifest in speech or to bring about God's earthly kingdom. We thus need to long for one another in order to make for wholeness both above and below.
Mm. Yeah, and all if with nothing else is just silent.
Right. Yeah. No. And and we talk about, we've talked about how beautiful that. Oh wow, it's the silent olive. It's like the moment of but that also is just the silent olive.
Yeah. I also wonder if this chatzitzuris, I mean, he points out the Yiddish pronunciation. Tsuris in Yiddish is also like pain, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the same root in Hebrew,
Sarah
but
in
I'm not
Hebrew.
sure. It's certainly two of the same letters of the root, and so it's like if we both have chatzitzuris, it's like the pain that exists in our separation, that longing that we have to be united. Each of us has a piece of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's fair to extend it to Sarah being. I mean, Sarah Tsura image Sarah pain.
Right. Which I mean, in the Hasidic rabbis would do that kind of thing with Yiddish to Hebrew puns whenever it suited their purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shukar.
Shkach to you. That was cool. Thank you for bringing that one.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Have a lovely Shabbos. Good week.